So you're in the market for AR-15 magazines. Well, today I'm going to give you my 2 cents about which AR-15 magazines I think are the best and why. So I started out using standard mil-spec magazines, aluminum magazines, steel magazines. I used a lot of Magpul magazines. I have used a variety of other, not really good quality Palmer magazines. And I have eventually arrived at what I believe is the best magazine going, and that is Lancer magazines. I use these in .308 and I use them in .556. And I want to highlight some of the things that I think are really good about them and what makes them a step above some of the other offerings that are out there. So they are relatively lightweight, which can also be said for standard aluminum GI mags and for PMags, Magpul mags. Also, they are very durable. Now, in terms of durability, if you were to compare these to a USGI magazine, you would find that these excel in some areas, and that a USGI magazine does not. One of those things is the body of USGI magazines can get dented and stuff like that, and that will create an issue of where if you were to take the body of this and smash it, because it's steel or aluminum, it got run over or something dented it in one way or another, the follower would not freely be able to travel through the magazine body. Palmer is superior in this regard in that, if I got this thing turned the right way, yes I do, now I do. Palmer is superior in this regard in that it will retain its form. Even if you run it over, unless it flat out just cracks or destroys the magazine, it will retain its form. Well, you can watch videos of guys running over PMags and Lancer mags, and they don't just explode or break or whatever. So they're superior to the USGI mags in that regard, that the body of the magazine is generally impervious to being dented or deformed in a way that would keep the follower from functioning properly in the magazine. So that's one of the benefits of a lot of the Palmer magazines that are out there compared to USGI magazines in the durability department. Now, they're also reliable. Well, USGI mags, if you get quality ones, are reliable. So are Lancer mags, so are PMags. Yeah, all of those magazines are all good and reliable. So what separates this magazine from Magpul mags? Okay, I talked about one of the benefits that this has over USGI mags in that the Palmer retains its shape. But what benefit does it have over a Magpul mag? Well, the biggest thing is it has reinforced steel feed lips on a Palmer body magazine. And the reason that that is beneficial and also detrimental, I'll talk about both the pros and cons of each. The way that it's beneficial, and this is the biggest reason why I've switched to Lancer magazines, is because they can be loaded and left loaded indefinitely without damaging the feed lips of the magazine or without any damage to the magazine. Some people don't know that you can leave your magazines loaded all the time. They think, oh, well, you're going to keep the spring fatigued or compressed and it will ruin the springs. I've heard from a lot of people who have talked to metallurgists about the functions of a spring in a magazine, and they have a certain space, if you look down here, that spring can compress into, and the follower will not allow it to compress beyond that point. Well, that spring should last virtually indefinitely, or more than your lifetime, loaded like that. You should be able to shove it in a gun and have it function flawlessly in terms of it providing enough tension on your rounds and not wearing out the spring. The thing that wears the spring out is the constant compression and decompression, but if they're just left loaded, you're fine. So load your magazines. Empty magazines don't do anybody any good. You need loaded magazines. If you happen to need to use them or you have an emergency, they need to be ready to go. So leave them loaded. Now, the issue with Magpul magazines compared to Lancer mags is if you leave them loaded because they have Palmer lips, those lips, and guys, look it up on YouTube and you'll find out for yourselves, There are guys out there that have bought 100 PMags for loading them up, keeping them stored, and then they go get them out and the mag bodies are starting to split because they're not reinforced with the steel going around them like this. And the feed lips are Palmer, and the feed lips will sometimes crack. And so as a result of that, I don't use those magazines anymore. Now let me tell you the trade-off that you're making with this over a PMag by doing that. Because it's not all sunshine and rainbows, there's a trade-off. The trade-off is if you drop these feed lips down, you run the risk, just like with the USGI mag, of denting the feed lips or bending the feed lips, and if you do, it might not function properly. Well, in the same way that the mag body could be dented on an all-metal magazine and deformed to where the follower doesn't work, if you deform the feed lips, you might have a magazine that doesn't work. If you drop a Magpul mag on its feed lips, that Palmer is probably just going to rebound to its normal shape and you're going to have a perfectly functioning magazine. So that's the trade-off you're making. If that's a scenario you think, man, I really worry about dropping my mags on my feed lips, that might be something you want to consider. I'm not worried about that. I'm much more worried about the long-term storage of being able to buy 30, 40, 50, 100 magazines, keep them all loaded all the time, pull them out of storage and have them be functional and ready to go and not damaged and broken. So that's the trade-off that I'm willing to make there. Now, another thing I have noticed with these, and I noticed this primarily with steel case ammunition, but the magazine lips, in my opinion, on a steel magazine are not as slick as an all Palmer lipped magazine like a Magpul mag. I'm talking about the friction. So when your bolt goes to strip a round off, I believe that this is just what I've experienced. I have seen times where steel case ammunition in a certain rifle would not feed, and it would feed in another one. And when I mean it wouldn't feed, the rounds weren't going fully into battery. And what was happening is it was stripping the round off and it was going part of the way up into the chamber and stopping. And when I switched over to PMag with the exact same ammunition, sometimes that PMag or the PMag would generally feed it no problem. Now, none of the guns that I currently own have any issues running steel case with Lancer mags. But I have seen, and I do believe, that metal feed lips, whether it's USGI mags or these mags, run into more problems or more potential for a problem because of increased friction with the metal on metal than the Palmer on metal. So there's some information for you. These are by far my favorite magazines. I use them in my 308. I use them for my AR-15s. They are a little bit more expensive than PMags, but I think they're worth the price just based off of the fact that you can buy them, load them, go practice with the ones that you want to practice, but the ones that you leave loaded, if you buy 50 mags, 10 years from now, you're still going to have 50 mags. I hear guys say, well, magazines should, they're disposable, and if you use them to where the springs are worn out, and it's just as expensive to buy new springs and followers as new mags, just buy new mags. Like, that makes sense. But as far as long-term storage, I completely disagree with people that have the mindset of, oh, just plan on replacing your 30, 50 magazines every 3 to 5 years. I am not going to do that. I am not interested in doing that. That is ridiculous to me, to pour that kind of money into magazines and basically just have them be, falling apart in 3 years or 5 years or whatever. So anyway, that's my 2 cents on magazines. Can't go wrong with Lancer mags. Thanks for watching. Have a nice day.